What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. One Piece chapter 1167 has dropped. It's a good chapter. Honestly, there's a lot to think about here, and I'm liking this one a lot better than I did last chapter. I think coming off the heels of last chapter was a little iffy. I think we missed a lot of stuff last chapter. As far as here, I thought this chapter was very comprehensive. There's a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. A solid chapter. So of course we're going to talk about it. I think this episode's going to be a chapter centered episode, so I probably won't do any updates on seasonals after. Of course, if you have not caught up to the latest chapters episodes, please know that there will be spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
Okay, chapter 1167, Ida's Son. The cover request this time is back in Cocoa Village, and there's a cat that's being scolded for stealing a book, but you have Nojiko and Gin basically just smiling and looking at it. I think it's adorable. And this isn't obviously in call to Nami. And it's kind of cool because not only do we have like the cat burglar motif, and then you have like, you know, Ginzo and you have Nojiko just having fond memories of the cat. On the book itself, it's of a fish. And if you kind of recall Luffy's description of Nami, it basically just looks like this fish. Like a lot of cool callbacks, a lot of cool stuff here, just an adorable cover request. Going into the chapter, we're actually hitting a time skip. So we're 5 years after the God Valley incident. And you have Morgans in some town talking to a bunch of people, and they're recollecting this story of seeing pirates approaching, but suddenly behind the pirates, there was something huge and shadowy. And they have no idea what it was. It's basically just like doing this huge tale, and Morgans is just eating it all up. We cover to Impel Down, and you have pirates talking about how their ship was in ruins before they knew it. And other people in the cell are like, well, did you get attacked by a Sea King? And they were like, no, it was definitely a human. It was a huge human. Cut around a little bit more, and you have more reporters asking questions in a different town. And they're asking about them being in the Florian Triangle. And while the captain said that they don't fish near that region because they know to avoid it, they're like, something in the fog was huge, monstrous, and human-like. So we have all these stories of pirates, of fishermen, just people being out in the water and seeing a huge human-like figure coming down on them. Whether it's like destroying their ship or just moving in the fog, they keep seeing it. And now we know there's some lore to the Florian Triangle where there are giant monsters hiding in the mist. While I think this is an interesting callback to that, I don't think they're necessarily related, considering the timing of, obviously, Harold's not still out there. But just because I don't think there's any other giants just waiting in the Florian Triangle. And they also said that they weren't in the Florian Triangle, they just mentioned it. So I think it's just a callback, a noted callback, not necessarily related. But yep, it turns out it's Harold, and basically he's doing the government's bidding by hunting down pirate ships, coming out of the fog, and just obliterating them. And I mean, it's Harold. He continues to disappoint me, I guess. I don't know what else I'm expecting from Harold, and it doesn't necessarily make him a bad character. I think this is all within character for Harold and what he's trying to do for Elbaf and his people. I think he's just making so many bad decisions. And here, of course, he's attacking pirates, so yes, they're technically the bad guys. My thing is that you don't know what these pirates have done, if they've done anything really. In a similar vein with Rox, where it's like, you wouldn't kill Rox because Rox is your friend, even though he's a pirate. You know he's better than that. You don't know what these pirates are up to. But here he is. He's just coming out of the fog, slicing ships in half and leaving these people for dead or to be captured. Basically just doing the Navy's bidding. And it would be different if he actually like tried to carry it out while thinking about the consequences of some of his actions. It seems like he's just following it completely. Like when you think of someone like Kuma, who a lot of people called him like the government's lapdog, while he followed orders, he did it the way he thought was best possible. And even sometimes he didn't follow orders despite being known as the guy who follows every single order. He very clearly had his own ideas about how things should be carried out, and if he felt like it, he carried it out that way. I feel like Harold is just blindly listening because he's so eager to get a position with the world government. He just keeps making like bad decisions. So he's out here, he's taking out pirates. There are rumors circulating about him, basically because no one's really seen giants. Like in this era, giants aren't super common. So when people, the survivors, or people that are like basically hearing these rumors tell the story, they don't know what they're seeing out there. They don't know that there's a giant man from Elbaf destroying ships. No one has any idea about that. So it's basically just a lot of rumor in circulation. Now, while this is happening, we get mention of like the other pirates that left God Valley, which would be Kaido, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Shiki, Ochako. They all continued to rise in prominence and power and became defining faces of their generation. The narration then goes on to say that most of these pirates simply clashed over territory. Now, I'll break it off here because there's a little bit more narration on this because they talk about how Roger basically surpassed all that. Like, while all these people were fighting for territory, Roger decided to circumnavigate the whole world. And you know, that's how he became king of the pirates. The thing about the clashing over territory, they had this specifically over Ochako and Shiki. And I could see these two somewhat clashing over territory because we know that Ochako basically takes over Beehive, which is like Rock's home base. So it'd be very easy to see those two fight over that area. Now, as far as Whitebeard, I honestly don't see him clashing over territory like that. Whitebeard was more or less going to territory to keep it from being destroyed, not to claim it. And we know that Kaido goes to Wano and he just stays in Wano. Big Mom ends up creating Tatoland. So as far as like a clash of territory, I think the major players being Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard, they weren't clashing over territory. It was mostly Shiki, Ochako, and then, you know, some of the other God Valley pirates. So Roger is held as a pirate king, and of course we have his execution, in which the world government takes all credit for as if they captured him. We know what happened. And of course they were doing this to display their power. All it does is, you know, set up the Great Pirate Era. And because of this, because none of the Navy, none of the world government expected such a surge in piracy, they start bringing in all kinds of forces to bolster their defenses. So this is when we see giants being drafted into the Marines because they're trying to get stronger. They're seeing these pirates out here and they're like, we can't compete. We need more firepower. And in this time, we have Harold who makes his way to Maryjoy. And like he's in the Gorsei's room. But we see some commentary before we like get to the room of other celestial dragons. And you can tell that's other celestial dragons because they're talking about how they want to make him a slave. That's all they're doing is they see a giant man and like, oh, I want him as a slave. So that's how you know it's the scum that is the celestial dragons. But in the room of authority, you have the Gorsei explaining to Harold essentially what it means to ally with the world government at the highest tier. So they start explaining contracts. There's the Shallow Sea contract, which is a minor pact. There's the Deep Sea, and there's the Deep Sea contract. Now, Harold would be invited at a Shallow Sea contract, which would be basically the lowest form. They're saying he would be the right hand of the God's Knights, a God's Steel. And if that sounds familiar, it's because we've heard that being referred to before in Gunko. Gunko was referred to as a God's Steel. Now, a God's Steel is essentially someone who is not tied directly to the God's Knights or Imu or the true God, as they describe it here, but they are basically in their servitude. So it's not a matter of like Harold doesn't get to know what's going on with Imu and the certain levels of power that the God's Knights and even the Gorsei have received. You're just, it's basically like a probationary period. They're testing you out to see if you're going to make it. Now they say that there are only 13 individuals in the entire world that received that privilege. And so you would say the Gorsei are going to be 5 of those, and the God's Knights are probably going to be the remaining 8. And it would depend on how many are here now. They may have increased. I don't know if 13 is set as a very specific number, as in they don't go past 13. But if we think about the other people individualized with that power, you have the 5 Gorsei, then you have 6 with Garling, then you have Shamrock, 7, Summers is 8, and you can look at Maffy as 9, Killingham is 10, Gunko's 11, and I think we have maybe 2 more. There might be more of the old God's Knights. Of course, they could have been eradicated. But we have, I think, 2 or 3 slots considering Garcia was removed. So it could still be that matchup of 13. We don't know exactly if some of the older God's Knights are still God's Knights, because that would change things up a little bit. But it seems like there's a set number of people who have made that contract. And it says they are fully bound to the true God. And I believe that contract comes in the form of that symbol on the arm that we've seen the God's Knights have. And that's what probably gives them the powers, the transmutation circle, like the summoning circle, all that stuff. All that stuff probably comes with the deep sea contract. What I'm guessing Domi Reversi is a deep sea contract. I think it's right in the middle where you're bound to the god, but you're not like fully bound, you're not in full servitude. It's more or less like a parasitic bond. But essentially, they're telling Harold that if he works his way up, he can become, bound to the true God. He can get that deep, deep sea contract. And Harold's like, okay, if I get that, then can Elbaf become a member nation? And the Gorls are like, yeah, of course. Which, at this point, duh, because they now control you. They now have dominion over you, so of course they're going to take your nation with you. But Harold just sees it as an opportunity for them to join. Harold doesn't realize that this contract means that he's giving up all his freedom and the freedom of his land to the world government. Now Harold then goes to meet with the Gods Knights, where we have Garland, who's the captain. We have Summers here, we have Shamrock here. And something very telling about this is that Harold is here talking to the Gods Knights, and while Garland is a little on the fence about it because he's like, what is Emu planning with this? Why does he have Harold here? And you have Summers, who brings forth a very valid point, which is that he says you're going to obey us even though you're the king of Elbaf. And Harold's just like, of course, just say the word. And again, Harold, what are you doing? Because even Summers is like, bro, you're the king of Elbaf, and you're just gonna submit to whatever we say? And Harold's just like, yeah, of course. So like, it's just his idea of wanting to become so subservient just to have Elbaf as a member nation is just ruling every judgment he makes. And it's sad to see. But Garland's like, okay, well, we'll keep you on call. Don't talk about any of this stuff here. Otherwise, you can do whatever you want. We cut about 13 years in the future, and then we have a scene with Harold, and he's actually visiting King Neptune. And like, they're chilling, they're having drinks, just having a good time, laughing with each other. And they start talking about Loki. And I'm wondering if Neptune has actually met Loki, or if Harold's just been telling him tales, because Neptune's like, I honestly don't think your son's that bad. Like, you were kind of crazy back in your day, so let's not forget that. If we have a comparison, he doesn't seem so bad. And even Harold agrees with that, like, because we know Harold was tripping. Harold was going crazy back then. And so far, we haven't really seen Loki do anything, especially to like humans or other people. Loki's only done stuff in Elbaf, and only really to people that have messed with him first. And then Neptune kind of goes through the same spiel that he does with Roger, where it's like, hey, I'm having a kid, and this kid's going to be super powerful. And I feel like Neptune should stop saying that. It's interesting that he's trustworthy, but I feel like telling everybody that your daughter is Poseidon is a little crazy. And I mean, trust goes a long way. I'm sure he sees the good in the people he's told, because he's told Roger this and he's told Harold this. Maybe keep it a little quiet. And Neptune brings up the idea of basically having his daughter and Loki wed. And while they kind of think about the idea of it, I don't know if this is actually a toast to encourage the marriage of them two, or if they're just like, yeah, that's a solid idea, we'll think about it. And it's also funny because they throw in the same gag that Roger did, where Harold calls Neptune's daughter like Harry. Or like they imply that she's going to be Harry when she's born, which is a nice catch. A little later on the same year, we cut back to Elbaf at the Owl Library, and we have Saul here. And he's basically looking for refuge. So this is a little bit after O'Hara. Saul's got like all his scars. And we're not entirely sure how long before like Saul left O'Hara that he ended up making it here. But this is where he asked Harold if he could stay here. And in return, Harold's like, can you open up a school? Like, if you're going to be here, if you're going to be here at the library, can you open up a school as well? And of course, Saul's like, yeah, I can do that. Jump forward about 5 years, so 15 years ago, we have a major incident at the land of Maryjoy. And this is the escape of the slaves led by Fisher Tiger. Not something I was expecting to see again, I'm gonna be real honest. But we get the scene of Fisher Tiger basically running away, still got chains on his arms, and he runs into a Gods Knight, which he recognizes as a Gods Knight. But he blatantly says, oh, is that a Gods Knight? Now, I don't know if he's realized this because he spent time on Maryjoy as a slave, or if there's another reason why he knows about the Gods Knights, but he is well aware of a Gods Knight. Now they're about to clash, and we get a little panel of a shaded figure jumping up to Fisher Tiger. Now, the figure clearly looks like a young Shanks, but because we have Shamrock and Shanks, obviously we're supposed to have some speculation on who it is. It's very clearly Shanks because Oda has one of his eyes shaded. Also, Shanks has shorter hair, Shamrock at this point has long hair. So, very clearly Shanks. Shanks pretends to cut Fisher Tiger, ends up destroying his chains, and says that the armor will be left open. and he's going to tell Fisher Tiger the location. So it turns out that Shanks basically aided in the escape of all these slaves. He basically gave Fisher Tiger the means, the tools, the know-how to get off of Maryjoy. So obviously the slaves start fighting back. We get a scene of Boa, and she's being rescued by Sandersonia, and we know that this is the same time they escaped as when Fisher Tiger escaped, so we're just kind of getting more of this. We see Koala as well. We know that she escaped with Fisher Tiger. So just nice little nods back to some of the past information we've gotten about basically what happened here. And we've heard this from a few different viewpoints, because we've heard like Fisher Tigers, we've seen from Boa, and now we're kind of seeing almost a third person view of everything. Like instead of being behind one person's eyes, we're seeing it from up above. And the narration goes on to say that the attack on the Holy Land was carried out by Fisher Tiger. He goes on to become the Sun Pirates. Obviously, they don't make any mention of him having any assistance. So basically, this is a Fisher Tiger-led mission known to the masses. Fast forward a little bit, and Harold is back in the Holy Land, and he's talking to the Guys Knights about basically what happened here. And Summers mentions that they know that somebody left the armory open. They just have to find out who did it. And they're looking to execute them. As they're having that conversation, Garland walks up and he says he has someone to introduce to Harold, and it turns out to be Shanks. Garland's like, so this is Shamrock's younger brother. They were separated a while ago. He faced a lot of hardships in the surface world, but we got him back. And he says he's going to be an asset on par with Shamrock. And I already know what this is going to do to the Power Scaling community. Honestly, I'm going to say there's not much to go in here for that. Because we know Shamrock's strong. We know Shanks is strong. We don't know how much stronger either of the two get after this point in time. So for them to be like on par, sure, that's noteworthy for this moment in time. Doesn't really say a lot for the future. We don't even know if Shanks has hockey at this point, so just let's just hold on a little bit. We'll see some stuff. We'll see. And Shanks essentially has the role of God's Steel, just like Harold. Basically, they're trying to break him back into that Holy Land mindset because he's been on the surface world for too long. And Harold mentions that he feels like he's met Shanks before, to which Shanks responds in a very un-Shanks-like way where he basically hoists his nobility over him. And he calls Harold a giant commoner that shouldn't act so familiar with him. He's got the blood of the Figurelands, so he's going to rise to God Knight way before Harold does. And Harold's just like, oh, okay. I didn't ask you all that, but sure. And we notice that Shanks has bandages over his eye. So that means Shanks has incurred the attack from Blackbeard. Now, they must have recently found him because there would be no reason for Blackbeard to be anywhere near the Holy Land, so this must have happened like right before Shanks ended up here. But that would also indicate that Shanks got that scar a while after he left Roger's crew. And I think we get that because Shanks doesn't have the scar in some of the flashback material, but we're getting closer to a time where we actually see like the Shanks Blackbeard fight. But what's interesting about this is that we have a child of Roxy Zebek that has encountered Shanks. So Teach has encountered Shanks. It's very possible that at this point in time, Teach has information important to the Holy Land. Now Shanks calls over to Shamrock and he's like, all right, I want you to show me the rest of the Holy Land. I want to basically learn everything I can while I'm up here. Like, I want to learn everything about the Holy Land. I want to find that traitor. I want to execute them. Like, I got stuff I want to do. And even Shamrock's kind of like, oh, okay, well, just take it easy. You know, you still have some wounds, so we can wait for that to heal before we do anything. And what I like about this panel is that essentially Shanks and Shamrock, they wield their swords on opposite hands. So you wield your sword on the opposite side of your dominant hand. So for Shanks, his dominant hand is his left. So he wields his sword on his right. Then you have Garland, his sword's on his left, so his dominant hand is his right. And Shanks just keeps going on and on about how he suffered so much on the surface world. Like, everything down there was a pain. He hated it all. And it's like, he's laying it on so thick. And Shamrock is just looking at him like, oh, okay, buddy. Like, I get it. I understand. Which is weird because Shamrock is like, when you consider like Celestial Dragons, when you consider the Gods Knights, they are very like snobbish. So for Shamrock to be like, like, I get it. Like, he's not even that fazed by it. You would think he would chime in with it, but he's kind of just going along with it. Very interesting. And you have Harold kind of noticing it all, and he's just like, okay, that kid's acting weird. So it's like everyone's looking at Shanks like he's acting a little too hard. And meanwhile, Shanks is just here just going in about the surface world. And then we cut to Elbaf within the same year, and we get some bad news, which is that Ida is sick. Now, the people that have been looking after her, they're trying to find a doctor, but basically the medical knowledge here is too limited for the help she needs. And what they want to do is have Harold use his connections with the world to get a better doctor, which he entirely could. If we recall back to when they were starving, basically Harold was able to get tons of food sent to Elbaf because he made really good connections. He could easily get a doctor. It'd be so cool if he pulled somebody from Drum Island, but they're not going to call on Harold. Basically, Ida's saying that she can do this on her own, that she doesn't want to bother Harold too much. And we see her, and she doesn't look like incredibly worse for wear, but you can tell that she's a little down. Like she has the sweat beads, her head's a little, she has the cross lines in her head to show that it's kind of heated. Like she's very clearly weaker than she was before. And so you have the village doctor there, you have Macho there who ends up taking over the tavern. And Ida's telling Macho hey, you gotta keep the tavern open. This is what I do to help Harold. I greet people from all over the world that come to Elbaf. I bring them in, I give them a nice time. This is what I do as my part for helping Harold. And she says that, and the doctor's Harold's been trying to get the elders to agree to let you guys marry, which is insane. I'm the king of Elbaf, and I'm out here working 9 to 5 to make Elbaf an affiliated nation. I can't marry who I want. And of course, it's tradition, and the elders aren't going to drop their tradition. But I feel at some point, if I'm King Harold, and maybe at this point, he's a little too far gone into the nice King Harold to do that, I'm squaring up with the elders. Because ain't no way the elders are beating me. I know that for one. King Harold's top 5 in strength right now. But of course, he's going to abide by the traditions. And that's where we hear shouting from outside, and it's Loki. And he calls Macho a foreign hag, and he calls Ida an old hag, and he ends up bringing a giant bull. And he's telling Macho to cook this up and serve it to Ida so she can get better and open the tavern. And it's very, very cute because this is Loki's way of reaching out and trying to help without being a softie, pretty much. He doesn't want it to seem like he cares because he says Ida has my favorite hangout spot. That's why I want her better. He clearly wants her better because he appreciates her and he wants her to be better. The doctor then goes on to say that, Loki's still a troublemaker, and he's surprised that Ida's been able to keep those two in line. And we get a reference to Heidrun, who is currently out searching for a better doctor. So, they're still searching for a doctor. They're just not necessarily using Harold's connections. Or at least having Harold reach out for a doctor. But of course, Ida's just don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of this. I'll be fine. And then we cut over to Alcohol Village, which is the hometown of Estrid, which is Loki's mom. And Loki's talking to him, and they're telling him that basically the people of this village, who are essentially Estrid's family, are hey, we don't think Ida should be able to be married in. We don't want her connecting with royalty because we feel that's our birthright. We feel as Estrid's family, the true blood giants, we should have whatever birthright comes with that. We should have whatever inheritance comes with that. So we got to keep Ida out. And then the old man, one of the relatives, mentions that they've been dosing her with poison, and essentially they've been slowly killing her. Now, at the time, it seems like Ida is on her last leg because she's gone from sitting up to laying down. The doctor is hey, we can't really hold off calling anybody anymore. We have to do something now. And Ida spends this time basically saying that despite Loki being hard-headed and, a rapscallion, she treats them both as her sons, even if they're not related by blood. And as she says that, she says that Loki's her cute little son, and then we skip over to Loki, who is brutally beating the villagers here. And he's asking them, is Ida actually going to die? Which, if we take a look at that, we know how Loki addresses Ida. It's always some kind of derogatory term, calling her old hag or something like that. He directly says Ida, which shows how serious he is about, what's going on here. He then goes on to say that he still remembers his birth mother, and he knows that she hated him. He remembers how she threw him into the realm of the dead. So he's I don't care about her. I don't care about this family. I don't care about the inheritance. Y'all are all garbage. I don't care about none of that. So tell me again, is Ida actually going to die? Because she's the only mother I've ever known. And in the background, we have the entirety of Alcohol Village is just raised on fire. You have the bodies of the people on the ground. They're definitely dead. And I honestly think you have Loki breaking the neck of the old man who slipped the poison to Ida. So like this entire village is gone. They don't survive. And this might look bad on Loki's part, especially if he doesn't accurately explain why this happened, which I feel like he won't. But yeah, this entire village is gone. And like I said, we kind of knew that Loki had some kind of, maternal feeling for her. And like I said, we kind of knew how Loki felt about Ida. Even if he was a bit standoffish, we could tell that he actually cared about Ida, considering that was the one place he always went to, and considering how she always treated him, we knew that he cared about her. So this was a foregone conclusion that realizing that now she's been poisoned, yeah, he's gonna trip, he's gonna tweak. And that is the end of the chapter. Like I said, a lot of stuff happened in this chapter. We get more character development on Loki. We get the odd reveal of how Shanks ends up back in Nerjoy and what he's doing there. Like he's very clearly trying to learn more about the Holy Land because we know he leaves later. We also know that he didn't hate his time with Roger because we know how we've seen that before. We've seen how he interacted with that stuff. It's like it just creates this air of more mystery around Shanks because we know that he traveled with Roger. He didn't go to the final island. But as far as I know, he was told about the final island. So now he's in Maryjoy, where he can learn about the information that he didn't see with his own eyes, because we know that of all people that would know that, the Gorosei Imu, they all know the true history. So he can put pieces together here. And so what I imagine he's doing is that he's just gathering information so he can go back out to the world. What's kind of odd about this whole reveal is that they don't paint Shanks in such a light. And maybe it's to save face because the world government doesn't want anybody to know that a God's Knight became a pirate. I can very easily see that happening. But they seem almost lax with Shanks because we see how they kind of refer to him. We see how they interact with him. Shanks is not like a negative figure to them. I'll say it like that. The way they talk about Kaido, the way they talk about Whitebeard, Big Mom, is not the same way they talk about Shanks. So I'm wondering if there's still some loyalty or familiarity. There's something more to this. Like, we know that Shanks is going to leave. We know that Shanks doesn't necessarily mean everything he's saying right now. But what's going on here? Like, there's so much mystery to Shanks. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. We've gotten very little answers about Shanks. Yeah, absolutely banger of chapter. Like, especially from the last one we got. I'm so happy with this chapter. And I'm happy we're still, in the flashback. I think, like I said, we'll probably be writing this out to the end of the year. But yeah, let me know what you thought down below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.